This poem is an unconventional ode written by Caroline Duffy to celebrate and commemorate her mother, who elicits awe and is clearly Duffy's inspiration. She writes about her mother in the 1950s and uses much of the glamorous culture, the fashion of Hollywood to commemorate and idealise her mother's past. The poem is comprised of 4 quintains, which means stanzas that are 5 lines long, and each of those quintains is written in blank verse. That means that there is no rhyme scheme on Duff holding pavement. You can see for yourself there's no rhyme scheme, and it's written in loose iambic pentameter. So you get that I'm 10 years away from the corner you laugh on with your pals Maggie McGuinney and Jean Duff. You get that sort of falling into the rhythm. That blank verse creates a highly conversational tone, which is reflective of the familial intimacy between Duffy and her mother. So she uses the structure to reinforce that closeness, and it elicits a heightened sense of awe and admiration for this woman in Duffy's life. Therefore, she of course adopts the informal conversational opening, I'm 10 years away. So highly conversational and reflective of their intimate relationship. It's highly likely that Duffy invents the names of the pals of her mother, Maggie McGuinney and Jean Duff, in order to create a more vivid picture, a vivid recollection of this moment from her mother's past. That sense of a real vivid picture is further underlined through the assonance, that recurring vowel sound of E, McGuinney, three, each, knees, shriek. All of those words create vivid oral imagery, which help the reader of the poem to fully enter this scene as she encapsulates her mother's childish vivacity and innocence. Moreover, she creates imagery of common 1950s fashion, the polka dot dress, which is really consolidated through her final one-word sentence, Marilyn, where she evokes the 1950s starlet, Marilyn Monroe, who was so admired in her day, just this quintessential Hollywood icon who she compares to her mother. And she uses the caesura, which means a pause in the middle of a line of poetry here, to create that sense of drama before the final reveal that she feels her mother is synonymous with Marilyn Monroe. The short sentence that introduces the second stanza then creates a new tone of pathos. I'm not here yet. And she reminds her reader that she is imagining a past life for her mother, a life where her mother was more fun, more vivacious, more outgoing, more flirtatious, which is of course underlined through her synecdoche, the 1,000 eyes. She reduces the male admirers to their eyes using synecdoche, which is a type of metaphor, because they were the parts of these men that were focused on her mother, that admired her mother's beauty, youth, and Hollywood starlet persona. She actually creates imagery of Hollywood through this idea of the movie Tomorrows, the sense that her mother could have the perfect Hollywood ending if she played her cards right. Duffy also suggests that her mother was a skilled dancer, reinforced through the enjambment, which means a line of poetry that's split over 2 lines, from I knew you would dance like that, and building tension and suspense as her reader imagines her mother dancing so attractively. She actually empathizes with her mum as well when she realizes that as her mum had late nights out with male admirers, she knew that her ma would stand at the close with a hiding for the late one, and she uses the Scottish colloquialism hiding to reference the common practice of scolding children by smacking. And in her final shorter sentence in this stanza, she creates a tone of pride and palpable empathy when she says, you reckon it's worth it. And that second person pronoun, you, as she directly addresses her mother and respects her rebellious nature, which no doubt reflects Caroline Duffy's own rebellious nature. The third stanza introduces a stark tonal shift. Through her rhetorical question, the decade ahead of my loud possessive yell was the best one, eh? She asks her mother whether her mother is being truthful when she claims that the decade after she was born were the best years of her life. And that superlative best, evoking, I suppose, cynicism and doubt in Duffy, as she believes that her mother must have preferred her days of freedom, the days when she could wear those high-heeled red shoes. Duffy uses vivid colour imagery there to suggest her mother's beauty, her sensuality, her attractiveness to other men, and worries that those red shoes for her mother are now relics, a word which means something that's no longer in use. And so she uses that word as a metaphor to connote the change that her mother went through after giving birth to Duffy. This word also uses religious imagery because relics are often associated with saints in the church, and so Duffy venerates her mother, holds her up as a saint, someone worthy of respect, and that's further reinforced through this imagery of her mother as a ghost. Here Duffy becomes a sort of voyeur, entering an imaginary scene where her mother's ghost clatters, this onomatopoeic word, making the scene once again much more vivid towards her. And the ghost of her mother is clear as scent. That simile is very, very interesting. Simile uses olfactory imagery to create a sense of immediacy, almost like a romanticised movie scene where her mother walks towards her and has love bites on her neck. Now, this references 1950s as an era of sexual repression, and Duffy is clearly proud of her mother's rebellion against that often sort of sexist oppression of women, where they weren't allowed to express their desires, and this was greeted with shame, this idea of having love bites. Duffy's respect and awe for her mother is, of course, conveyed through her tone of maternal pride in the endearing term sweetheart. Now, in her final stanza, Duffy begins with the non-sentence, these sounds cha-cha-cha, where she references the popular 1950s dance of the cha-cha-cha. And this marks the moment when Duffy and her mum are together, and Duffy is able to fully experience and appreciate her mother's fun and carefree attitude towards life. Because on the way home from Mass, her mother begins stamping stars from the wrong pavement. And this is quite an ambiguous line. Her mother's stamping stars, it's absolutely a metaphor. And it may suggest simply her mother dances on the way home from Mass, which in a time of religious piety and Catholicism in Scotland shows her ongoing rebellion against social norms. But it may also be a reference to Hollywood and the Walk of Fame, and the fact that Duffy believes her mother belonged on Hollywood Walk of Fame, but missed out on it because of her devotion to her daughter. But the sense of fun and beauty and vivacity never left Duffy's mother. And we see that through the fact that Duffy still wants the bold girl winking in Portobello, and that coquettish verb winking suggests her mother's vitality and her attraction even as a mum. And so that glamorous love lasts, and Duffy employs the alliteration of the L sound even through her tripartite list of verbs as she glamorises and idealises her mother even today. And that final wistful tone, which means a kind of nostalgic tone, as Duffy pines after a time when she never knew her mother when she was this age. She's looking back retrospectively and romanticising the past. And ends the poem with the refrain of her title, "Before You Were Mine." And there is a sense of guilt as Duffy worries that she has held her mum back from achieving her full potential. And this is an experience that's relevant to many daughters and sons as they worry about the people their parents could have been if they hadn't sacrificed so much to be their mum or dad. And so it's a beautiful poem. It's a poem which idealises parenthood and being a mother in particular.